Hey everybody, it's Jeff with Wiseman Automotive coming at you with another video. Let's change the oil on this 2011 Ford Explorer, the 3.5. All right, first thing we're going to do is get this oil cap right here. And if you see, it says it takes 5W20. We're going to get that off of here. And if you watch my videos, you notice that I always like to put them right here where the hood latch is, because you cannot shut the hood without putting the oil cap back on. Now, caution, if you were to slam the hood and forget, yes, you may break this oil cap, but a oil cap is a lot cheaper than buying a customer an engine, because if you let it get down the road and over time it throws all the oil out, and then it costs you an engine. So this is where I like to put my oil cap. That's just something I like to do. While it's right here, I also will be filling up the washer fluid right here. I will check my antifreeze from a radiator right here. I'll go over here. I'll check out the batteries. One of the things I like to do when I replace a battery is I like to date them. A lot of times I also like to put on there what kind of warranty this battery has. Is it 2-year, 3-year, 1 year? And a lot of times I like to write that on here. I didn't do it this past time, but I did put on the date of when I put it in. And then right there is where your brake fluid is. So I'll make sure I have plenty of brake fluid in there. And I also do a visual inspection. I like to check my hoses, make sure that they are connected securely. I don't see any leaks around there. I don't see any holes and rubbing spots or anything like that. Any kind of cracks in my smaller hoses as well. Make sure my grounds look good. They're not corroded. This right here is a ground right here. Making sure this right here is an AC line. That looks all nice and clean. And just looking for anything that looks abnormal. Another thing I like to do is, for my customers, is if I see pieces of leaves like that in the cowl panel, I like to go ahead and remove them. Just makes it cleaner. Doesn't be perfect, but I do like to do that for my customers. Sometimes when you do an oil change, you will have a customer pop the hood and just kind of inspect your work. Now, they may not know what they're exactly looking at, but if they see stuff like you've maybe wiped off this fuse box for them, and just kind of wipe some stuff off, make it look a little more presentable, that may help. All right, so right here is your engine oil dipstick, and I like to check that before we go with the oil change. So let's do that. So I'm going to pull this dipstick out, and the first thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to worry about the level right now. Take just a little bit on my fingers here, and I am going to lubricate this O-ring. Sometimes when you open up the hood of a vehicle, you will look for the engine oil dipstick, and I've seen where this handle here is actually broken, and that is due because people do not lubricate this O-ring right here, and it gets frozen in there. So they take and put their finger in there, they pull, and next thing you know, they break this off. So then you have to go in there with a pair of pliers and pull it out. So I always like to try to lubricate my engine dipstick O-ring there. All right, got it all wiped off. I'm going to stick it in there all the way. I'm going to pull it back out. I like to try to check the oil before I do an oil change, just to see if it's low. This one right here is in the hash mark area. It's between the two dots. If you can look right here, I have a dot here and a dot there, and there's little hash marks in there. You need to be in that area for the safe level of your oil. That looked good. If you are too full, that means somebody's added oil or put too much in. Or if you're too low, you may have a leak or maybe burning oil. So that's why I like to check before I drain the engine oil. All right, I'm going to come over here to my windshield washer fluid. And if you spill a little bit of this, it's not a big deal. It will dry up like I just did there. I'm going to make sure to put my washer, the cap back on. I Just heard the other day on the radio that 30% of the people do not know how to add washer fluid to their vehicle. So if you look right there, that's a little sign for windshield washer fluid, and that's how you do it. If you live in an area that freezes, you want to make sure that you get the right kind of washer fluid. This right here is good for -20, and that's good for here in the state of Virginia. All right, so we have the old cap off. We kind of smoked everything over. I checked it over, and now we're going to take this vehicle up in the air and get the engine oil draining. Whenever I do a oil change, at least on my own personal vehicles, I like to rotate the tires at the same time. Now, on all my vehicles, I do oil changes at 5,000 miles. Some of them say you can do 7,500 miles. Some of them say you can do 10,000, whatever. Me personally, I do all my oil changes at 5,000 miles. They also recommend you rotate your tires every 6,000. Well, you know, changing your oil too soon or rotating your tires too often isn't really a thing. It doesn't cost me an extra money because I'm doing the work myself. So what I do is I rotate my tires every 5,000 and change the oil every 5,000. Before I get the oil draining, I like to check over all my stuff as I'm going up in the air. And then once the oil is draining, then I can start ordering the parts I may need. Now, I'm going to rotate these tires from front to back. On the driver's side door, it said that these tires should be set at 35 psi, so that's what I'm going to set them to. When I rotate my tires, I'm going to make sure to do a cross pattern. The torque spec for your lug nuts is 100 foot-pounds. I have this is what it's called, a torque stick, and this goes on your impact gun like so, and it'll keep your impact gun from over torquing these lug nuts. Some people don't like torque sticks. I yet to really had a problem with them. The only thing, or one thing I will tell you with it is, never use a torque stick to take a lug nut off. Only use it to put it on. This is not an extension. This is a tool used for just putting the lug nuts on, not removing them. Now, before I take my lug nuts off, I like to grab the tire at the 12 and 6 position. I'm checking for play and any kind of suspension right there, and I'm going to go back to the 9 and 3 position, and I'm going to do this to all 4 tires. I am looking for ball joint play. I'm looking for wheel bearing play, tie rod, inner and outer tie rods, anything that I can find. If there is any kind of play, then the customer needs to know this, okay? All right, so I'm going to buzz these off real quick, and then we're going to rotate them. Okay, if you have watched my videos before, I always like to grab a trash can. And I like to put my tires on a trash can. That way I don't have to get all the way down to the floor to pick the tire up off the floor. Now that I got the tire off, this is a great time to inspect my brakes. And luckily for Ford, on this one, they did a good job by giving me a nice hole to look in. So if you look right here, this part right here I'm tapping on, that's the backing pad. That's the metal that you do not want to touch in your rotor, which is right here. And if you look, that area right here, that's plenty of pad. These brake pads are brand new, basically. One thing I want to show you is, if you see right here, that rotor has got, I'll see if I can turn it. See it? See right there? That's your rotor right here. And it's got slots right there. What those slots are for is to move air through to cool the rotor down, because when you hit your brakes, it creates friction, which creates heat. And the reason why they put those slots in those rotors is to get that heat out of there faster. So usually you can tell a front rotor from a rear. Most of your rear rotors are a solid rotor. They're not slotted because they don't do as much as the braking as the front pads and rotors do. Your front does roughly about 80% and your rear do the remaining 20%. Okay, so I'm looking in here, I'm checking my brake hoses, I'm checking my ABS wire, I'm looking at the rotor itself, make sure it's not cracked or anything like that. I'm just giving a visual inspection. This right here is called your McPherson strut. It's part of your suspension system. I make sure that's not leaking. A little bit of like dampness is normal, but you do not want it to actually have dripping. My axle shaft boot looks good. This right here is your outer tie rod, and this is your inner tie rod that goes to your steering. Everything looks pretty good. So now I'm going to take my rear tire and put on the front, and we'll go to the back and look. I took the back tire off and I moved to the front, but I do not have it secured yet. It's just on there finger tight right now. And I'm going to go over here, and now I'm going to inspect the rear. Same thing. Just looking at the shock absorber here in the rear. Make sure I don't see any dripping fluid. Looking at just doing a visual inspection. Looking at all your hoses. Make sure they're not cracked, leaking. Make sure they're not all twisted and out of sorts. Make sure everything looks good. Looking at my suspension components. Make sure that the rubbers in there still look pretty good. I'm looking at my lug nuts. I'm checking out my rotors. Make sure they're not cracked or anything. Of course, I checked out my brake pads. And again, these are like brand new. They got an inspection hole here. If you look right there, that's a solid rotor. And then that's your pad here and the pad there. I got plenty of thickness there. All right, I'm going to put the tire from the trash can on here, and then I'm going to put my lug nuts on. Got my lug nuts. While we were on the brake, I went ahead and went to the other side and rotated them just for to speed up this video some. All right, got my torque stick on here. Got my 19mm socket. A lot of times I like to go around just to double check after I get them torqued on there, just to make sure one more pass. We're going to do this one real quick too. Just make sure I got them all. Okay, now I'm going to adjust the tire pressure. I said earlier on the inside of the driver's door jamb, it has a spec to set these at 35. I do not go by what it says to do on the tire because that's usually like the maximum it can read. And I was trying to see if I could see what, yeah, this is the maximum pressure. So the maximum pressure for this is 50 psi, but you do not want to put 50 psi in this thing, or it's going to be like a balloon going down the road. What's going to happen is if you overinflate your tires, it's going to wear out the center of your tread more. So right here, you'll notice that the tread in here will be worn, the outsides won't be. And if it's underinflated, then it'll be the opposite effect. So let's get this thing set to 35 psi. And what I did was I grabbed my tire gauge here, and you want to put it on there. I'm going to see if I can get this kind of close so you can see. But you just want to put it on there. And when you put it on there, you want to just try to get like that. And I have about 38 or so. If you look on the back of this tire gauge, that's meant to push the valve stem in. You can hear that air escaping. I have about 36, 35. All right, I'm going to do this to all 4 tires, and then we'll take it up in the air. Right now, we need to find out where the engine oil drain plug is. So on this vehicle, the front of the engine is on the passenger side, okay? And then that means that the transmission here is more on the driver's side. The drain plug we're looking for is right here. And I wrote on here 20 foot-pounds is the torque spec because this is my personal vehicle. So that's the engine oil drain plug. And right here, this is the oil filter, okay? So, see if I can get a good shot here. I got a 15 millimeter deep well socket. And then I'm going to bring my telescoping oil drain pan here. And we're going to lift it up there. About yay high. Put this like that. Get it positioned here. We'll see if I can get a good shot for you guys to see. Okay. Now, I'm going to take in my finger like this. I'm going to spin it out of there. And then, come on. Yeah, not too bad. Just got a little bit on me. All right, so we're going to let that drain. Reposition this a little bit. Let that drain for a minute. Now, while I'm letting this drain, I'm going to take this time to inspect underneath to see if there's anything else that I see wrong. Like maybe some kind of bad leak, or exhaust problem, or frame issue, or in this case, subframe issue. Looking for, here's my gas tank, making sure my gas tank isn't leaking. No fuel lines are leaking. Come back here. This is an all-wheel drive vehicle, so I have axle shafts coming right there, coming from the differential there. Those look good. The springs look good. A lot of times you got to check springs and stuff like this to make sure they're not cracked. Sometimes people can overload them, and after time they will or they can crack. So make sure you're looking at that, especially for state inspections. Make sure that your sway bar links are all connected and everything looks good. All right, everything looks good on this one. So we're going to come back here, and now we're going to get that oil filter draining. One thing you can do if you want, you can take a punch and a hammer, and you can hit the bottom of this oil filter to let it drain out. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I typically just grab my oil filter pliers. These are probably my favorite ones I use the most. There's different types. I'll probably do a tool review on that someday. And start getting that to drain as well. And the filter I'm using to replace it with is a Baldwin filter. It's a B7449. All right, we're going to let this drain, and then we'll get the oil filter back on there. While I was waiting for the engine oil to drain, I did replace my drain plug gasket with a new one. So I got it on here. And sometimes they can be hard to get off. You may have to cut them off with a pair of side cutters. All right, so I'm going to I have an old rag here. I'm just going to take and spin that oil filter off. Turn it upside down and just let it drain. So if you look right here, this is where the engine oil filter mounts to. I'm going to take a rag and I'm just going to wipe away the surface, and that's just to make sure I have a nice clean mating surface. Whenever you're doing an oil change, you want to make sure that this gasket right here that seals the oil filter to the engine comes off with the old oil filter, because if not, when you install a new oil filter that comes with a new gasket, it's called double gasket, and what's going to happen is it's going to end up spewing engine oil. Now, sometimes Usually when that happens, it does it pretty much right away. But there can be a case where it may go down the road a little ways before it starts leaking. So make sure you get the old gasket off. Take some used engine oil that's still draining. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's still draining from my engine oil pan. I put some on my finger and I wipe the surface here like that, okay? So I got a little film of engine oil on there, and I'm gonna put this on there. We're gonna go just hand tight, just pretty good snug. Okay, one thing I like to do is I like to take a rag and just wipe off my filter. Make it nice and clean looking. One thing I would like to point out, and I did not remove this because this vehicle didn't have it, this thing does have a splash guard here, and somebody along the way has thrown that away, gotten rid of it before I even got this vehicle. So if you were to do this in your driveway, you would have some kind of splash guard, and you'd probably have some kind of nuts or some fasteners holding that on there. So just so you know, this one did not have it. If it comes with one, you should always put it back on. All right, this is pretty much done draining, so I'm going to put this in here and tighten it down. All right, now I looked up the specifications for this, and according to the manual, it is 20 foot-pounds of torque. So I'm going to get my torque wrench, and I'm going to set my torque wrench to 20 foot-pounds. I'm going to take my 15 millimeter socket, put it on the torque wrench. Now, when you're using a torque wrench, make sure you grab it here at the handle. Don't grab it up here, okay? All right, you hear that click? Okay, that's tight. Now, the camera probably can't see this very well, so let's see if I can move it. So let's see if I can turn around this way, give you a better shot at it. See how you got a drip of oil right there? You're gonna make sure to clean that off. You do not want any oil to drip off from the car and get on somebody's driveway. Now, I don't have to do this necessarily because this is my car, but if this was a customer car, one thing I like to do is I like to paint that oil drain plug. So I got some old fingernail polish here. You can use whiteout as well. I'm just going to paint the bottom of that. And what this is doing is basically proving that I tighten that oil plug up. So if somebody were to try to say that this is a customer car, and let's say the engine blew up, or let's say somebody went to try to mess that oil drain plug, and they try to say that I left it loose. Well, guess what? If that paint is still sealed together, you know that I tightened it. If it's broken, you know somebody's been there tampering with it. So that's kind of a little CYA thing there. So a lot of technicians do this. They like to paint the old drain plug just to prove to everybody that they were the last ones to touch it, and it was torqued to specification when they did that. All right, we're going to let the car down now, and we're going to add engine oil from the top. So I got this funnel here. Nothing special about this funnel. One thing I like to do with my funnels is before I ever use it to put any kind of oils in or anything, I like to take a little bit of brake clean like this, and I'll take it to my oil drain pan and I'll spray it out just because it gets any kind of dirt out of there, or maybe if I use it for transmission fluid last, or if I use it for something different, I know I'm having clean oil put in this vehicle. Okay, we are using the Federated brand full synthetic 5W20 because 5W20 is what they recommend to use in this, and you should always use what the manufacturer recommends for their engine oil. You can even cause problems, especially on newer vehicles, if you don't. All right, so I'm going to put, I think this thing takes like 6 quarts. I'm going to probably put about 4 quarts in this thing, and then I'll check the engine oil dipstick. I want to make sure I have enough in there, but we're going to have to make sure to start this thing to fill that engine oil filter. As I did not fill it. All right, I have roughly almost 4 quarts in there. Okay, yep, I have about 4 quarts in there. And now I'm going to pull the dipstick out. And remember, I'm doing this with the engine off on flat ground. If you live in a spot that has a hill like this, you live on a hill, steep hill, you cannot check any fluids in your vehicle and get an accurate reading. Pull this out. Okay, I'm at almost the bottom of the mark there, so I know that I can take the full 5 quarts in here without having to worry about starting it up. All right, now I don't know if the camera can see. I think you can pick it up. I'm right here, right in between where I need to be. So that's good. But I'm not done yet because, like I said just a minute ago, we have to fill that engine oil filter up. It's going to take a little bit of oil in that. Sometimes people like to pre-fill the oil filters, and that is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Some manufacturers may even recommend it, but you still need to, even if you pre-fill your oil filter, you still need to start your engine up, let it run for a few, I don't know, whatever, a few seconds, 10, 20 seconds, something like that, and then cut it off, and then recheck your engine oil, even if you do pre-fill your filter. So I'm going to start it up, we're going to let it run, and then we're going to come back and check the engine oil level. So I was checking my engine oil right after I cut the vehicle off, and it was kind of giving me some erratic readings. In other words, it wasn't anything I could really look at. So what I did was I just waited 2 or 3 minutes, let all the oil settle down, and then now I'm rechecking it. Okay, and if you look, I'm at the bottom of, like, I'm before that hole there, so I know I'm going to need at least a half of quart. So we're going to take some 5W20 here. And we're going to fill up about halfway here. That's roughly half a bottle. I'm going to wipe off my dipstick, and we're going to check it again. Push it all the way in. Make sure it seats. Don't make sure you push it all the way in, because if not, you'll get a false reading. All right, I'm at the bottom of the circle there, so I'm going to wipe off my my dipstick there. Grab my oil filter bottle. And we're going to check it again. Now, for you homeowners doing your own oil changes, getting rid of this oil, the used oil, may be a problem. I suggest taking it to a shop that either burns engine oil. They may take it from you. A dealership may take used engine oil from you because they burn it, and it gives them free heat. Another thing is my local AutoZone years ago, they used to take used engine oil, and your landfill, they should have a spot just for used engine oil and used antifreeze. And that's what I do with my used antifreeze. I take it to the landfill in these 5-gallon sealed buckets, and I dump it there in their certain container that they have. So that's how you can get used of your oil safely. All right, we're going to stick it. I put the whole quart in there, and we're at the almost, I say about the 3/4 way up on the way up. So this is perfect. So this vehicle takes 6 quarts of oil on that oil change. I'm going to grab the funnel. I'm going to grab the bottom of it like that, so that way it doesn't spill any more oil anywhere. I'm going to wipe this down. Make sure I put my cap on. Now, I should be done. So the first thing I'm going to do before I shut this hood, I'm just going to go through and just lay my hands on things just to make sure that everything's tight, especially the stuff that I touched. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that oil cap is on tight. Make sure that dipstick is pressed down good. I'm gonna make sure that the windshield washer fluid is on good. Maybe just check my radiator cap. Just make sure everything is nice and tight and snug, especially the stuff you touch. Just make sure everything looks right. Okay, that is how you change the oil on a 2011 Ford Explorer. One thing I want to tell you is we were talking about pre-filling the oil filter. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times, actually, I do that. It makes you feel a little better. I don't know if it's completely necessary on most vehicles. Now, on my diesel truck that takes an oil filter that's this big, yes, I do make sure that I pre-fill this oil filter before I put on my diesel truck, because this is obviously a huge filter, and it takes a lot of engine oil. But if you notice, there are some vehicles like the Toyotas with the 4.0 V6, their oil filter actually is at the top, and it sticks down like this from the top. So there's no way that you can pre-fill an oil filter that sticks down like that. So some people are going to say, oh, you have to pre-fill them. On those little oil filters, I don't think you have to pre-fill them. It doesn't hurt anything to do it. A lot of times I will do it, but I don't think you have to from what I've seen. Now, a big filter like this, yes, you should pre-fill it, because it's going to take some time for that engine to pump that much oil into that filter. So now that I have my hood shut, I wash my hands, I put my oil change sticker up there. Now we need to go through and use your left toggle here to reset the oil change light. So you go to vehicle settings. I'm going to push the right arrow to the right. Go to vehicle, oil life reset, push to the right, set to 100%. Oh, yeah, press and hold it. Oil light set to 100. I pressed the OK button when it said press and hold it. Everything else I was using the right arrow to. Okay? So that's how I change the oil and rotate the tires on my 2011 Ford Explorer. I hope this information helped you out. Please like, subscribe, share this video, give a thumbs up. Comments are welcome. And let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you watching this video and subscribing to me. And we'll see you guys on the next one.